Hello and welcome to the Goldenrod Podcast. I'm Ben. As always, I'm joined by fellow Pokemon enthusiast Conor to bring you some of the latest and greatest Pokemon news and a few laughs along the way. This week, we're talking very briefly about this week's Nintendo Direct. We're also talking about Eurogamer's recent interview with Pokemon Go director Michael Steranka about the current state of the game, as well as challenges that the team is facing. And moving on to listener-submitted topics, we're discussing what Pokemon have the wrong type and what are the key Pokemon archetypes that all regions need to have. As always, you can jump to a topic using the timestamps in the description below. Conor, I just want to start this week by thanking everyone that congratulated us on 100 episodes last week.
It was actually wonderful because obviously I've got the YouTube dashboard app on my phone. I get notifications from the channel. So just seeing 10 comments come through in the first couple of hours, and all of them were just like, well done on 100 episodes, guys. Keep it up. We really love listening to you. It's so many people say they listen to us during work. So many people say they listen to us on the drive, or it keeps them going and they look forward to it every week. So thank you. I know it's not saying much, but those kind of words really do lift our spirits a lot and keep us doing this.
They do. Like we said last week, it's just nice to know that people actually care about what we have to say, and you know, take time out of their lives, their busy lives, to actually listen to our content. It's really heartwarming and really nice. So thank you very much. Should we jump into the Nintendo Direct, which, as of us recording this, is scheduled for June the 18th. So it's tomorrow for us, but as of you listening, it's already been and gone. Was there any Pokemon news? You tell us. Probably not, I'd imagine. Probably not. I think there isn't going to be any Pokemon news, and we know there isn't going to be any Switch 2 news. What did we call it? You gave
Super
it a nickname.
Switch.
Super Switch. There we go. There's going to be no Super Switch announcement. That was already confirmed. And Cerebi Joe posted on Twitter that apparently we've never had the first proper look of a mainline Pokemon game in the general Nintendo Direct. So I can't see this breaking that trend, especially considering previous conversations we've had about, Pokemon Legends Z to A is likely to be the next Pokemon mainline game coming out, and is likely to be, at the very least, a Super Switch launch title. It might also be on the Switch. We don't know at this point. But regardless, they're saving that information for further on down the line. I cannot see that being announced this week.
I believe so. I mean, again, if we're wrong, we'll cover it in next week's episode. So there you go.
I'm hoping I am wrong, to be quite honest with you. It'd be quite nice to get something more about that game and talk about it, because we've only had a little bit of information, but what we have seen has been enough to make us excited for it.
Yeah, I'd say I'm definitely looking forward to Z2A. I mean, you could have slapped the Legends name on anything and I'd have been excited for it, because, again, it's the first time in a long while Pokemon has felt like it's gone in a different direction and offered something new to older fans. I really enjoyed the first game. I look forward to seeing what they do with the titles going forward.
Definitely. Me too. Let's jump into the first question that we've had this week, courtesy of, I'm just going to call them D over on Discord. That is their Discord name, just D ... Okay. But yeah, they have said, "Hi, I just listened to your episode where you talked about Pokemon that look like dragon types but aren't, and that got me thinking. What are some Pokemon that you think were given the wrong type, and how would you fix them? You talked about Lugia already, but the one that I always think of is Zeraora, who is a pure electric type, even though it definitely looks like it should be a fighting type as well. The thing that makes me really annoyed is that they made Pawmot the first electric fighting type, even though it doesn't look like a fighting type at all." So, Conor, should we start? More. Yeah. I don't understand why they made that decision, especially as someone whose main experience of using Zeraora has been in Pokemon Unite, where it definitely functions like a fighting type. It hits, it swipes, it's just really interesting why they made that decision.
I'd have really liked to seen as well, like we got with Hawlucha, our first double double type to move. I would have really liked to see Plasma Fist be our first electric fighting move. I think that would have been really interesting. And as D says, it could have been our first electric fighting type. And unfortunately, that's now gone to Pomot and Pomo, who, sure, they're fine. They're fine.
They don't feel... they are fine. And while I'll admit, I warm to them being an electric fighting type, I still think that was waste. That dual typing was wasted on them. It should have been reserved for a mythical. And like we've said before, the mythicals are just kind of thrown in the game. There you go. And you just move on from them. It would have been nice to at least have them, Zeraora introduced and be like, oh, there is something unique about this Pokemon. It's the first electric fighting type.
Yeah. Who have you got on your list? Okay, let's do this first. Is there anyone obvious you've got on your list?
Yes, I'd say the obvious one for me is Milotic, and I don't want to harp on about this too much. We spoke about this last week about, just how do you make it stand out a little bit more, water fairy typing. I think that would have suited it really well, but I can understand why they didn't do it, because obviously Generation 6, they didn't want to just suddenly slap fairy typing on absolutely everything.
Milotic's already a very strong Pokemon. It didn't really need the buff that fairy would have been. Similarly, we definitely covered Flygon. Everybody knows that they want that to be Bug Dragon. That's fine. I get it. Goodra, we kind of covered as well in the Dragon episode.
We did.
I think you said along with me that Poison Dragon kind of makes more sense.
Definitely.
And unfortunately, we had to wait for Naganadel to get that. Those are the ones we covered during that one. One of the other couple of obvious ones I've got, Golduck.
Yeah.
Now, I'd argue Golduck over Psyduck. I think Psyduck quite comfortably be a pure water type that evolves into Golduck and then stops having the headaches, and it then wraps into the lore. It's got no control over it in its base form. As soon as it evolves, it can be Psychic type and can control it nicely. And the other one I see everywhere is Florges. Being pure fairy type, it should just be fairy grass.
It's leaves. It's got leaves and flowers and stuff.
If Celebi is grass and psychic, and not a fairy type, despite it being the fairy Pokemon, then Florges should be a grass fairy type. Really,
agreed.
It just should.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Who else have you got?
So one that I have mentioned a long time ago, and this is me grasping at straws, I realize this, is Muck and Grimer. They're pure poison typing, but the fact that they are always on the ground makes me think that they should have gone for something a little bit unique there, especially considering the sewage and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen ground poison, but I will admit that is more of a wish rather than that's obvious, that's what it should have been. If we're thinking about one that I think is a lot more obvious, it's Zangoose. I just feel like
should be fighting type.
Should be. I am happy to concede maybe normal fighting. I think that fits it maybe a bit better than pure fighting, but regardless, it should have had a fighting type. Mainly because it's constantly scrapping with the Viper. It's just got the build of something that has a fighting type move, and I can't remember its moveset off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it has access to a couple of more physical moves in there. I'm sure. I can see Conor furiously typing.
I was actually thinking the downside you'd have is that obviously poison resists fighting.
Yeah,
but I could almost argue that Seviper could comfortably be dark poison.
I could see that.
Which would separate it more from Arbok.
Yeah.
Which is the obvious connection that everybody makes. So I think a dark poison type would have been really nice on that.
I like that idea as well.
I think we got one in Gen 3. I might be wrong off the top of my head.
What, a dark poison type?
Yeah.
I don't think we did either. I know we got a fair few darks, but in terms of dark poison, I'm just quickly scrolling.
No, looks like we got a bunch of them in like Gen 4, Gen 5. Okay, so no. Yeah, I think that would have been really nice. To talk about Muck and Grimer, as much as I understand what you're saying, they live underground, I don't think they represent the ground typing very much. And I think
Agreed.
if you're going to go down the route of adding a element to them, it should be water.
Water poison. Oh, okay. That would have been
because
interesting.
they are sewage. They
yeah,
are
no, that
sludge.
makes sense.
So I could see them being water poison.
Well, if we did that, then we could add ground and poison, ground to trubbish, because that probably does make a bit more sense. Because where do you throw your rubbish? You should put it in the
landfill.
bin. If you did landfill, yeah, that one would have made more sense.
Yeah, that would work really nicely and help to separate out. And then you could realistically go down the other route of making coughing and wheezing poison flying. So now you've got all three elements of the sort of we're ruining the environment and we're ruining every level of it, the water, the ground, and the air.
Love that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So that would have been a lot of fun. Another one I've got here, Gramble.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I understand to an extent why they made Snubble a fairy type. Because it tries to be scarier than it is. It's like a French bulldog. They get dressed up by their owners. I get it. I would still have loved to seen Gramble then be a fairy fighting type.
Agreed.
And I know fighting's quite an easy one to just slap on Pokemon if they look strong. But it's got the metal bracers. It's got the big choker. It looks like it's part of a biker gang.
Yeah.
Fairy fighting rather than fairy dark, which I don't think suits it.
No, and it's got like the Gramble has that kind of British bulldog kind of look to it, which are typically associated with like, rough and ready kind of dogs that are up for a scrap.
Even if all they do is sleep all day.
Yes. If that doesn't scream fighting type, I don't know what does. What else have you got on your list?
Speaking of fighting types, Graplocked.
Oh, that is just a strange typing in general.
It's just pure fighting,
isn't it? Yeah.
And yet you come across it in the water, and it chases you in the water.
In the water, yep. It's so bizarre.
So I don't know. That feels like if they'd introduced it a few generations earlier, it would have been water fighting. And once they got round to it, they went, nah, let's make it a little bit different. Let's make it stand out because.
Yeah, I think that the more we talk about this, the more I realize that I think it's almost that I don't think, for the most part, Game Freak designed their Pokemon generations in advance. For the most part, it is, okay, this is the current generation that we are building towards, what the Pokemon we're adding. And then they try to create, all the Pokemon that are available in the mainline game. They kind of go, okay, so we need to make sure we've got a nice selection of Pokemon so we're not over balanced or, we haven't got too many typings in certain ones. And unfortunately, what that sometimes means is that they, like, for example, Muck and Grimer, they will then go, okay, who's the pure poison types of this generation? Rather than actually going, okay, well, thinking back, we've already got enough of those typings. Let's create a Pokemon or a unique typing for that generation. And I think that's why we have a lot of these issues where Pokemon don't have the typings that they probably should have.
One you've mentioned before, and I thought I'd add on the list, Runerigus.
Yes, bizarre typing.
Why is it Ground Ghost? It's Rock Ghost. It just should be. It should be Rock Ghost. Considering that we already have Ground Ghost in Golurk, it just I don't understand it. Why is it not Rock Ghost?
Is Golurk got the correct typing? Thinking about that,
I mean, it's based off of Golem, which are made out of clay. Which I guess is more ground than, at least within the Pokemon world, that's more ground than it is rock. And I understand that.
Yeah. Okay, I can let them off with that then, I guess.
That being said, well, I was going to say the Reggies, but the Reggies are all specifically elementals.
Yeah.
We don't have a rock ghost Pokemon. So they had an opportunity to introduce a new typing and didn't.
Yeah, they make some weird decisions, which goes back to what I was just saying. It is one of those strange... And in fact, thinking about it, Sableye, it's Dark Ghost, I think I agree with it being Dark Ghost. It could have been Rock Ghost because, it's got the gems. Gems are minerals found in the ground. So it could have easily been a Rock Ghost as well.
I kind of like Sableye gets a little bit of a pass for me just because its typing was so unique and gave it zero weaknesses at the time. That being said, yes. The thing is, it's the sort of thing where if it came out now, I don't think it'd be dark. I think it would have been fairy. I think it would have been fairy ghost. Yeah. It's more of an impish nature than it is dark and sketchy. And the last one I've got on my list here is Azurill, which is the baby form of Marill.
Okay.
What do you know what type that is?
It's normal water, isn't it?
It's normal fairy.
Pure normal. Normal fairy. I knew it wasn't water fairy. I knew that was right.
Yeah.
Normal fairy. Why is that?
So it used to be when Marill and Azumarill were pure water types, it was normal, which I don't understand the logic there. Is it a case of its tail isn't buoyant enough to keep it up in the water, so it stays away from it? I've actually never looked into the lore of Azurill too much. Maybe there's something in there that explains why it's...
I think just looking at its moveset, it does get a couple of water moves, but when I'm looking at it, it's got splash, slam, and bounce. So they all speak to me of it doesn't rely on its water moves yet because it's not strong enough. It has to rely on what it's bouncing on, basically, is more of a weapon. That's the way I see that.
I mean, it does say specifically that it uses its tail as a flotation device, so it's got no issue being in the water.
No.
Yeah. I think it could... Again, it's one of those of it's a victim of when it came out. I think they tried to separate it from Marill and Azumarill by making it normal. I think when Azumarill and Marill got the water fairy typing, it should have just been pure water or pure fairy. I think arguably I would say it starts off as pure water and then becomes a fairy type later.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I just do not understand the normal typing in there.
No, I agree. I'm quickly scrolling just to see if there's anything else. But I think the more I scroll, the more I look, the more I realize that sometimes I think Game Freak are guilty of going, oh, we can't make this one a normal type because we've already got so many normal types. Let's throw something else on it. For example, Oranguru, I think is a good example. Why is Oranguru normal psychic yet Simeon is pure fighting? Yet they're both monkeys.
Yeah, I would have assumed it was normal fighting.
Pure fighting. And I think that's
because they're counterpoints to each other as well. So
yeah. And there's a couple of others like that as you're scrolling through where it's like, oh, okay, I see where you've tried to differentiate it from what has come before, but it doesn't work. Although look at the more I look at these Pokemon, the more I realize that it's almost like, and I don't know how they could incorporate this, or I don't even think it is possible. It almost feels like there needs to be some kind of speed type, something that, like maybe the Swift type, like something that is fast, just to help differentiate some of the Pokemon that are, you've got multiple electric types. Well, some of them are faster than others, for example. I don't ever see them doing anything like that. But the more we talk about this, the more I'm thinking 18 typings is a lot, but yet still feels quite restrictive because we're going to get to the point where there are no unique typings left. I think there's like less than 20 unique typings left.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't great, to be honest with you, because they all double up on weakness.
Yeah, they're like normal cross something for a lot of them as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think, just to go back, just to kind of wrap this up, I think, of Game Freak are, they're a victim of their own success, and when they are making these games, they kind of have to go, well, we need to balance it out in some way, which is why some Pokemon don't get the typings that they probably should get. But I think a question I've got for you is, if Generation 10 comes out and they just went, we want to rebalance some of these mons, and we're just going to change their typings, there's going to be no lore explanation, We're just going to do it. How would that sit with you?
Not very well, honestly.
No?
I think it would really... I get over it. Much in the same way as when I play through ROM hacks that change up the typings of a lot of Pokemon. It gives me a reason to go and pick up some of these Pokemon I've not used before. Some of them I don't always agree with. I staunchly disagree with the idea that Luxray should be a dark type. I just don't think it should be. Nothing about its character screams dark to me.
The closest... There's two reasons I can think of. One, which is one that I don't agree with, but I understand people's thinking, is it's got dark fur. Okay, so what? okay, cool, what, fine. And the other thing is because it does get access to Crunch and Bite, which are dark type moves. I get that. I still don't think it has enough of a move pool that relies on dark types or a nature that gives it that kind of feel. So I'm actually happy with that being electric type.
No, a Luxray killed itself in the snow to try and save a human. That's not a dark type Pokemon. It's just not.
Yeah. By the way, when did that happen?
I think it's in one of the, when they redid the first series as a movie.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I think it was one of the guys in there. He had a Luxray and it died because he got caught out in the snow.
Ooh.
I'll double check, but I think that's correct.
Yeah. Right. Always interesting with your little tidbits.
I'd get over it, but I think they've already given themselves an opportunity to re-flavor a bunch of these Pokemon with regional variants. And I think that's a much nicer way of doing it because you don't have to mess with the original. We can give them a little splash, a little bit more push in that direction and go, no, this is what a dark electric Luxray actually looks like. I'd be up for that.
Yeah, I like that.
Does that make sense? Like, I'd much rather get a variant of Luxray that was a dark type than just Luxray be made dark type.
Yeah, I can understand that thinking about it. And let's be honest, they have introduced 3 new typings since the Pokemon series came out. If they were going to rebalance, they should have done it at any of those points. When they introduced Fairy, if they'd have gone, we're introducing Fairy, we're rebalancing some of the Fairy types, but that also means that we're going to take a look at some of the other Pokemon because of, we don't want to skew Fairy or it's weak or strong to, skew them too much. They should have done it then if they were going to do it anyway, and I would have been okay with that. I think now if they did it, I would be disappointed, but from a different reason for you. I think the reason I'd be disappointed is because I'd go, this is just yet another example of Game Freak not forward planning. And just going, we've kind of got ourselves into this situation. What do we do? Let's just change a load of Pokemon typings. It wouldn't sit right with me. But you make a very good point about regional variants is just a way around that.
No, and I was right. It was in the I Choose You movie. The Luxray dies, unfortunately.
Was it? Oh, so it should have been electric ice if it died in the snow.
No, because it wouldn't have died if it was an ice type. Electric Ghost, come on.
Electric Ghost is dead now. Electric Ghost, there we go.
Much in the same way as we're going to get a normal ghost type in the form of a regional, not Herdier. What's the evolved form of Herdier? Stoutland.
No, why would it be? Go on,
so it'll be an Alolan regional variant of Stoutland that is a ghost normal type. You heard it here first.
Why do you think that? What do you know?
Because in the Alolan anime, Ash is not Torcat. What's Litten? Ash is Litten. Yeah. He finds it on the street and it's being protected by a Stoutland, and then the Stoutland just dies of old age. Not funny. It's not funny. It's really sad.
It's not funny.
We have to laugh, otherwise we'll cry. That's what's happening here.
It's the fact that for me, it's the fact that Pokemon has always tried to draw this it's like they've tried to draw the line in the sand of, okay, we acknowledge that Pokemon die, but we don't really want to talk about it. And yet every now and again in the anime, they just go, no, it just straight up died. And then they're not even trying to hide it. They're really obvious about it. It's just bizarre.
To be fair, they never die from Pokemon battles.
They don't, no.
They never die from over-exhaustion. It's always either old age or, devotion to a trainer.
Yeah.
Which I think has its own questionable. Like, sure, a Luxray dying to protect its owner. Okay, cool. Charmander just willingly gonna sit there and die because its trainer told it to. That's dark, man. That's really dark.
For a kid's show at the time, that was extremely dark. Oh, have you got any other Pokemon before we move on?
The only other one I had was Heliolisk, but we kind of covered that during the dragon episode as well. We said it could have been a dragon. It realistically could have been electric fire, and I wouldn't have questioned it.
Yes, yeah. I agree there. Yeah, normal electric's just bizarre. Again, feels like that Game Freak just going, oh, we can't make another electric Pokemon. Oh, what could we add to this? Oh, add a normal typing to it.
Have we got an electric fire one, though?
Have we?
I don't think we have.
No, we haven't had an electric fire type, but it feels like that is a powerful combination that they're saying. It feels like some of the combinations they haven't done,
Rotom.
they want to. Yes.
I know, Rotom doesn't count.
No, I'm not. No, I agree. I don't think that does count because Rotom oven form isn't something you can find naturally in the wild, and it's very niche in terms of like what it fills. But then, we didn't get a grass fire type, did we, until this generation, Gen 9. I always
People
forget
have been
what it's
begging
called.
for that forever. Scovillain?
Scovillain. Yeah, Scovillain, which is banging name. I absolutely love that name. I actually really like the design as well. I still don't get how that evolution works, personally. How it evolves from a little chick with an egg into fine, whatever. The Game Freak just being Game Freak. But it feels like, they intentionally save some of these interesting typings to give it something a lot better. I thinking about it, I remember when Cinderace was first on the scene and people were saying that was going to be a fire electric type because it was, it's fast, it's running around, generating
people
electricity.
were saying that because they were just begging it wasn't firefighting.
Yes, which I'm glad it wasn't firefighting. But I think we actually got something even worse and we just got a pure fire type. That's what it is. Ready to move on, Conor?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, before we move on to the next topic that's been suggested, just want to say if you've got a comment, question, or topic, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, or by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. So this next topic comes courtesy of Lemon Drop, who says, what do you think are the essential Pokemon archetypes that all regions need to have? Like, all regions need starter Pokemon, legendary Pokemon, and so on. So, what are the essential Pokemon archetypes? They've nailed the obvious two. Starter Pokemon, we need starter Pokemon to go on the journey, and we need legendary Pokemon to give you that scale, that sense of adventure. What else do we need in there? If you'd have asked me, at previous points in my life, I probably would have said fossil Pokemon. And yet there have been times where, but they're not in every generation. Like Generation 2 had no fossil Pokemon, no new fossil Pokemon.
I think Gen 6 did, Gen 7 didn't.
Gen 7,
I don't think Gen 9 did
yeah.
either.
Gen 9 didn't either. So they are willing to skip that every now and again. And yet, fossils for me feel like
a staple.
One of those things.
Should be.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
I feel like if I was designing a Pokemon game, I would want a fossil in there.
You'd want at least two, I think.
Yeah.
But every generation, because the great things about a lot of the fossil Pokemon, they are based on real life equivalents. You got, I'm not going to name all the dinosaurs that they're based off, but there's enough in there for them to go, okay, we just need to have a look at past dinosaurs. What can we pull out? And just, although, thinking about it, Gen 9, I know we didn't have fossil Pokemon, but we had dinosaur-themed Pokemon in the Paradox versions of Entei, Suicune, and Raikou.
Yeah, I guess.
Did they count?
Would fossils have drawn away from the past Paradox Pokemon?
Maybe that's why they dropped
Maybe.
that game, at least.
Maybe. Difficult though, because I actually disagree. I think if you'd had fossils, it would have lent to the idea earlier than the sort of post game of the DLCs. You know, that where you go and see Turo or Sada
Yeah.
above the mountain, and they tell you that basically they're from a different universe. It would have lent to that if we had, for instance, you know, one of the past Paradox Pokemons has a Pokedex entry that says, "Oh, it's from 1,000,000 years ago," and then we have a fossil that's also from the same time period and looks nothing like it. Does that make sense? You could have gone, right, this is perhaps the descendant, or this is what Jigglypuff descends from. You can see a clear connection here, but it also looks nothing like the past Paradox form, but they apparently lived at the same time. It would have led to that idea of like, no, these are not past Pokemon. They're from a different world entirely.
Yeah, I think the fact that we had, you know, I use air quotes here, past Paradox Pokemon, makes it feel like the removal of fossils from Generation 9 was needed to be done to prevent some muddying of the water of, Paradox Pokemon from our past. Are they not? Are they, like you say, from an alternative dimension? So I understand why they dropped them.
Other things that I think should be staples. I mean, the early root bird, I think, is pretty staple. I think did we miss one in Gen 8? You had Corviknight. Yeah, Rookidee into Corviknight. Gen 9, you had Gen 9, not really, but Gen 9 was difficult on the roots.
Yeah, so Gen 9, we did have a couple of flying Pokemon.
Flamigo, you get quite early, but it doesn't really meet the kind of early root bird that I expect.
No, you had Wattrel as well, but again, that was it wasn't early root. You had to go out of your way to get that.
Yeah, Wattrel feels more to me like the regional bird.
Agreed.
You didn't catch it early root, which was very strange because I could have quite comfortably seen Wattrel down on the beach. You know, when you come out the cave, you could have had Wattrel on the beach there and nobody would have questioned it, and then that would have fit the role. I understand that they kind of tried to... Pokemon fans naturally like to see patterns within the games, and Pokemon very often try and go, no, there is no pattern. You're just seeing things that aren't there. Much in the same way as, you know, the Pika clones. Yeah. The Pika clones are something that really needs to be in every generation. Generation 2, you can argue whether it's Pichu or Marill. I think there's an argument both ways on that one. But from Generation 3 onwards, there's always been a Pika clone. And depending on how you look at Gen 2, depends on whether... what's the mouse in Gen 9 called? What's its first form? Pawmi. Whether that is the first Pika clone that evolves.
Oh, it's a weird one. I look at Pawmi and I just think, I don't think that is a Pika clone. It just doesn't feel... It feels too far removed, but I can't explain why.
It's an electric mouse Pokemon. It's an electric rodent.
Yeah, I know. But for some reason, my brain doesn't associate that with a Pika clone like it does every other generation. It's strange. I can't explain it.
I think you should have an electric rodent in there, regardless.
Agreed.
I also think you should have I always call them early root rodents, even though the vast majority of them aren't rodents, but that kind of Rattata, Bidoof, you know, those kind of Pokemon they're really early on. They're super easy to catch. They learn a bunch of HMs, or they used to. That kind of thing. They
used to, back in the day, yeah.
Much in the same way as I used to think you'd get a lot of early bug Pokemon, but you don't necessarily anymore. The bug Pokemon were very good early on at teaching people how evolution worked, because they leveled up really quickly and evolved really quickly. And I think they served their purpose up to a point, and now we don't really see that so much anymore.
I'm happy with early root bug Pokemon not being an archetype. I would like to see them flip it, personally. I would like to see it where you get, you know, the next generation, maybe the early the early typing you get is ice. Like, mix it up. And the late game is bug. I'd like to see them mix that up as well, just to give players the opportunity. Because typically, ice type is one of the ones you get late in the game. It's typically, somewhere between Gym 6 and Gym 8. I'd like them to mix it up and go, okay, right, what are some of the typings that maybe haven't had a lot of love in the past couple of generations? Let's bring them to the forefront. That's why I'm okay with that not being the bug Pokemon not being an archetype.
Pseudo legendaries are an obvious one. We always need a pseudo legendary every single game, and they are basically just what is it, 700 base stat total? Is that how we work them out now?
Yes.
Double check that figure because I don't think that's quite right.
It's definitely above 650, isn't it? I think
600. Pokemon has a base stat total of exactly 600.
600, right?
That's
okay,
what we classify
I agree.
Legendaries.
Yep. Pseudos.
Anything else you can think of?
What was I just thinking of then? Gimmick Pokemon. I think there should be a gimmick Pokemon in every generation. Something a little bit quirky. So we've had right, okay, I'm gonna try and name them all now. We had Smeagol, Kecleon. Oh, okay. Who else have we had? We had the bird that Chatot. Chatot's one of them. I know there's more. So I can't remember them. Oh, I'm going to Google this now because I want to know. Gimmick Pokemon. So, we've got... it's called Novelty Pokemon on... what? I'm looking on... yeah. Oh, that doesn't work right to me. Okay, so Novelty's kind of grouped in a couple of Pokemon that have weird evolutions. Apparently Magikarp, Ditto, Eevee, Porygon, Unknown. Yeah, I don't like this at all. That's not what I think is a
Ditto
Pokemon.
I can see.
Yeah. Castform is another one. Wobbuffet is another one. Shedinja is another one. 1 HP. Someone said Aegislash. I don't agree with that. I know the stance change is a gimmick, but the gimmick for me feels almost like
it's a little bit of a joke.
Yes, you can't viably use this Pokemon unless you are going for a kind of a challenge playthrough. What else have we got?
Trying to look through Gen 5. The closest I've got is Shelmet and Carablast, who kind of have to trade with each other to evolve. That's the only thing I can really think.
Yeah. Unknown.
Sawsbuck
gimmick Pokemon
kind
as
of
well.
Changed with the seasons. Does that count?
Again, I don't think that counts because it gets a nice enough, it gets a good enough moveset that it's still viable. I'm thinking of the ones where the gimmick basically makes it so you are playing at a disadvantage trying to use these Pokemon.
But if you know how to play them and nobody sees it coming, you're good to go.
Yeah. One that you touched on there, trade evolutions. So it's one of those annoying ones where I wish they did away with them. But because they won't, makes me think that it is a Pokemon archetype, is weird trade evolution.
I think they're designed to encourage trading amongst people.
Yeah.
I think they're not so much anymore that the trade evolutions are locked between each version, are they? What's a Gen 9 trade evolution?
You've got... is Charge Cadet a trade evolution, or is that...
No, you have to collect the...
just the item. Okay. Oh, no, we have got one. Finizen into Palafin. You have to trade that one. Which was annoying.
No, you don't. You just have to be within the Union Circle, I believe.
That was it.
You have to play with friends.
Online. Friends, yay! Which is even worse than having to trade.
Does that count?
As a trade evolution?
As a gimmick?
Oh, say it
have
counts
to
as
use
a
the
gimmick,
Union
but not a
Circle.
gimmick
You have to
Pokemon.
use the Union
Oh.
Circle to get it, and you have to swap it out initially in order to make it super powerful. It's a weak connection, but
It's I can see the argument there. I still think that Pokemon is too good of a Pokemon for it to be considered a gimmick Pokemon. I think it's a Pokemon with a gimmick, not a gimmick Pokemon. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't look like we got any trade evolutions in Gen 9.
Interesting. Okay. Another one that I think is now a Pokemon archetype, even though it's only come around since Generation 7, is, you mentioned them earlier, regional variants.
Yes.
I think that is something that will stick around, and I'm glad it's sticking. It's
But
a great
not
way
convergent
to...
evolution. That can leave.
That, I hope, was just one person's dying wish at Game Freak, and they went, okay, yeah, we'll put it in for Timothy because, he's not longing for this world. Then once Timothy's gone, that's it. We're dropping that. It's a stupid idea. It doesn't add anything, and I hope we never see it again.
Dropping that as hard as Timmy dropped down the well.
What else? The poorly released mythical Pokemon.
No,
Is that Pokemon? Is that something?
Give me good mythical Pokemon with good mythical stories that I can play through.
Again, Pecharunt. We got that with Gen. Maybe they're breaking away now from it. Maybe that's not an archetype anymore. What else have we got? Pokemon archetypes. Unique evolution methods.
Yeah, I could kind of
get that every.
Those.
I agreed. I would.
I understand what you're saying. There's almost one in every single generation. I think they topped it off with Malamar, with turning the DS upside down. That's it.
Beautiful.
You done it. You've done the best one. We're done now.
Yeah.
You don't need to do this anymore.
You won't top that. And that works on Pokemon Go as well, which is fantastic. They brought that through. Brilliant. Again, those quirky ones I don't mind because they don't rely on me having to go, right, I need to either know someone or I need to get on some online forums to try and set up a trade to get this Pokemon. Like, just, no thank you.
I mean, I prefer it to a Stone Evolution. I think Stone Evolution is something we could quite comfortably get away from now.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they have changed some forms of evolutions, like Magneton to Magzone used to need, was it like an electric field or some kind? You needed to go somewhere with powerful electric current or something like that. Whereas now you can just use a Thunderstone. So they're not afraid to change it up every now and again.
So that's something as well with the gimmicks, is it gets hard because you've then got to, they're like gimmick evolutions. You've got to find a way to implement it in every single generation. Like every generation now, you've got to try and give a Mossy and an Ice Rock, a Mossy Stone and an Ice Rock, just for 2 Pokemon. We gave up on Milotic a long time ago, and we're just like, it's just a marble scale now. Don't worry about raising its beauty, even though that was the whole point of its lore. Now you just give it an item and train it. Trade it.
Yeah.
So, as much as I think they're okay, I think they lack that forward planning that we really want from Game Freak and we keep asking for.
Definitely. Another one. And I don't know what the Pokemon technical term for this is Pokemon that have multiple forms. So Alchemy, Vivillon, I'm sure there's a couple of more in there where you only need it once for the Pokedex to trigger, but that Pokemon has plenty of different
appearances rather than forms. Yeah.
There you go. And the last one I can think of off the top of my head, even though more keep coming to me. And again, I don't think this is an archetype as such, but it feels like there's enough times that this has happened. So fused Pokemon. And I was thinking, when did we last have fused Pokemon? We had them in Generation 8 with the fossils. Those are technically fusions.
Technically, yes.
Technically. But thinking about that actually, and Gen 5 dragons. Actually, is there anything else? Any other fused ones? I don't think there is, actually, is there?
I mean, Rotom technically fuses with other things.
Technically, yeah. Again, okay. How
I
about...
don't think that's an archetype. I think if it was,
agreed.
we wouldn't have so many fused ROM hacks.
No, you are absolutely right there. I'm struggling now for Pokemon archetypes. I mean, obviously we've spoken about post game legendary. Yeah, I know we've spoken about legendaries. Let's just break that down a little bit more. So legendary Pokemon typically, the legendary Pokemon tend to fall into a category of you get them either just before the Elite Four or just after the Elite Four, based on the story. Struggling to think of anything else.
Or at the start of the game, and then you get to ride around on them like a bike.
Yeah.
Necrozma. Necrozma was another Pokemon that fused.
That was it. Yeah, I knew there was another one.
Technically, Calyrex.
See, this is the part where, is it a fusion or is it just one Pokemon riding another Pokemon? And it's...
I mean, like, you need to use an item, and they start off as 2 Pokemon, and they leave as 1 Pokemon.
Yes. When I say fusion, in my head, what I mean is you take design elements of Pokemon A and Pokemon B, and then you mash them together, and you get something unique.
It takes the full design elements of both.
It does.
Are you trying to tell me you can't look at Shadow Rider Calyrex and not see, there's Calyrex.
Yeah, I can see both of them. I get your point.
And there's the horse.
Oh,
God, that's awful. The fact that I can't even remember the names of the horses. Spectria and Glastria, there you go.
Well done. Apparently 2 terrible Pokemon, but I might be wrong. I don't know. Okay.
Great.
Oh well. I think that's it for Pokemon archetypes. I can't think of anything else. Can you?
No, not from... No. I mean, there's an argument for, like, the pollution Pokemon, as we said earlier, with, like, Muck and Weezing and Garbodor. But that's stretching, because I think it's really only those 3.
Yeah. I'm sure there's maybe 1 or 2 others that I can't think of off the top of my head, but... Yeah, it just doesn't feel like that is something that is a staple of every single generation or most generation.
No,
right,
that's it.
That's it. Let's move on to a recent Eurogamer interview with Pokemon Go director Michael Staranka, who has spoken about various issues with the game at the moment, including the avatar backlash and a course correction needed on the slowdown of new species. Now, Connor, you mentioned that you'd kind of summarized this, had you?
I've taken a couple of notes, so obviously it's quite a long article.
It is.
If I remember, I will try and leave a link below. If I haven't, Google it.
Yeah, it's worth if you Google it. Yeah, do your work. If you're still playing Pokemon Go, if you're interested in Pokemon Go, I really recommend reading this. As me and Conor were talking about before we started recording, it's quite nice to actually have someone come out and be very open and honest about the current state of Pokemon Go and some of the reasons behind, decisions that have been made. I really enjoyed reading it and just having that information.
So I'll try and summarize the points. We'll go from top to bottom and then kind of talk back and forth on each one.
Yeah.
So they talk about the fact that, yes, Pokemon releasing has slowed down over the last couple of years, noticeably so, to the point where they've only released 1 Mega Pokemon in the last year, which was Mega Heracross, which is a massive slowdown to where they were at. They do talk about the fact that they still want to bring Pokemon out, but there is obviously a finite number of Pokemon within the main games. So in the back, they are talking about, okay, how do we manage this? Is it a case of we now have to slow releases down? Or can we do something else that makes Pokemon Go stand out and stand alone outside of the main series? There's no mention of them making new Pokemon like they did with Melmetal. I think it's an option that they're not ruling out. It doesn't say that in here. I think it's an option they wouldn't rule out. but they are talking about like, okay, we've got the rest of the megas to do. We've got Galar Pokemon to come out. They've not really touched Gen 9 yet. So there's still room for them to grow, but that's, at what point do they catch up with everything that's out and then go, well, that's it, guys. There's nothing new in the game now. Thoughts?
Yep. So I think the slow rollout of Pokemon is. I think part of it is they obviously are very aware that part of the lore to both new and returning players is that, oh, you've completed everything. Well, now here's a new batch of Pokemon. There you go out and get them, and it gets people playing the game again. But I must admit, I think part of that slow rollout is just a result of them putting so much work into bringing out other features as well. And I think that's part of what maybe where they've been trying to get to is, okay, we realize that we can't keep bringing out new Pokemon. Otherwise, we'll get to the point where there are no new Pokemon to bring out. People complete the Pokedex and then go, I'm done. I'm not coming back to this until Gen 10 comes out. So they want to obviously stagger that. But I also think that, part of the reason why it has slowed down is because they've been bulking out so many features so that eventually when they do hit that point where the vast majority of Pokemon are in there, there's still reasons to play. And I think that's one of the key things that, we'll talk a little bit about later on in the article is about like the level cap, for example.
Yeah.
Ways that they can entice people to continue coming back. I think that one of the ways they can do that, and I think they've maybe done this in a strange way, is the fact that obviously Mega Pokemon don't stay Mega Pokemon. So don't know if you know this or
you need
people
Mega
that
Candy,
Pokemon
right?
go. You need Mega Energy. So the way it works, let's say, so I've got a Tyranitar. It's one of my strongest Pokemon, and I can Mega Evolve that every, I think, 3 days off the top of my head, and it doesn't cost me any energy anymore because the more you Mega Evolve it, it basically reduces the cooldown period and the amount of energy you use to the point where eventually you can just Mega Evolve it every couple of days and you don't need the energy. So there is a point where if you've got enough Mega Pokemon at that level, you can just constantly keep cycling through them. My Tyranitar can't Mega Evolve that one, but the following day, I'll just Mega Evolve my Charizard instead. So they've done something there. I think one of the issues, though, is that people don't see Charizard and Mega Charizard as two separate Pokemon. I know they're not, but from a completionist point of view, they could have maybe given themselves a little bit of breathing room by going, oh, Mega Pokemon? No, you can catch them and they stay Mega Pokemon in your party. And, there'd be, I don't like that from a lore perspective, but thinking from a gameplay perspective of them trying to maximize maximize the length of time they're going to have with Pokemon Go while not throwing in all the Pokemon. Some of the ways they do that is Gigantamax, regional forms, Mega Evolutions, and go, okay, we're not adding all these new Pokemon. We're still adding existing Pokemon, but we're adding new forms of them. So it still gives that benefit of, oh, new Pokemon to catch, but it isn't eating into their pool of Pokemon that they have left.
Yeah, I think you know better than anyone. I'm lore first. So when I was listening to how you said Mega Evolution worked and the cooldown gets less and less and less and you need less energy each time, my immediate thought was, oh, it actually gives you an ability to gain trust with your Pokemon and make this easier over time. You build that relationship by doing it over and over and over again. That works for me. I really like that idea. I didn't know that was in the game. I'm 100% behind that. They do talk about sort of this idea that Mega Mewtwo is brought up, and he talks about how they want to bring Mega Mewtwo to the game, but when is it right to do so? We want to introduce this Pokemon at a time and with an event that makes them feel as epic and legendary as that Pokemon should be, which the cynic in me wants to say, oh, well, that's very good marketing speak right there. The Pokemon fan in me wants to go, yeah, thank you for having sort of revering this Pokemon as much as I do. You know, we constantly talk about how mythic Pokemon don't get the love they deserve. They don't get the events. If Pokemon Go has events built into its gameplay loop, yeah, that's exactly how you should be releasing them. They should be this sort of long build up to them and then this payoff at the end. Not necessarily what they did with Mew, but that's the shiny Mew. That's a different conversation.
To be fair to them, though, the mythicals that they have released, and I might be wrong, but definitely at least 3 of them have been, they've just been free in game, and you just go, oh, okay, here's what you need to do to get that, and it's a couple of pages worth of tasks, and then every time you complete the task, it's the professor talking to you about that Pokemon. It gives you the lore information about that Pokemon, and then at the very end, you get to capture the mythical Pokemon, and typically it has like a really cool, unique background and animation, everything. They do really well with that.
Yeah, so I like that. They also talk about, so there's no word as of yet on the bringing Z moves or Gmax to the game. It is obviously something they have in their back pocket that they can release at any time to revamp the game, to add something new to players without introducing new Pokemon per se. Again, we still don't have all the Mega Pokemon yet. We don't have basically any Galar Pokemon, probably some starters and things like that, as far as I'm aware.
Have a handful. There's about 20 in the game at the moment. There's not a lot.
Yeah. So
the starters aren't in there.
Oh, the starters aren't in there?
The Gen 8 starters are not in Pokemon Go. We've got things like Squavette, Phalanx. I don't think Cramorant's in there. Okay. If it is, I haven't caught it. We've got a handful of Gen 8 Pokemon, but definitely not the starters.
So no word as of yet, but it is something they talk about sort of in the back rooms and go, right, we have these that we can basically look at bringing in at any time. You mentioned the increased level cap, which was quite an interesting part of this article, actually. Talking about the fact that people are kind of stuck at level 50 now. People who've been playing since Pokemon Go came out, they hit level 40. Was it 40? Was it 30 initially?
It was 40, I think, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, okay. 30 or 40 initially, and it's gone up to 50. And it was really nice hearing how they think about this, because my only knowledge of this, and I never played WoW, but I know lots of people who have, and sort of the level caps have gone up and up and up as the years have gone on, and people have been at the highest level forever. And my question has always been, well, okay, they're introducing all this sort of end game content, which you have to be level 50, level 60, level 70 to access. It doesn't encourage me to join the game. And it's like, no, it's really easy to get to that level now, because the game starts there. And that's kind of the way they talked about increasing the level cap to 60 from 50, is a case of like when they raised it initially to 50, they went, okay, let's make it into 30 real easy. You can do it in a month. You can do it in a few months. However hardcore you play it, you can do that now. And then to go from 40 to 50 is not just so much you're leveling up just by doing daily quests and things like that. You're doing very specific things.
Oh yeah, I'm on that road.
Are you? Okay, really, so you know more than I do. Please.
Yeah.
Please.
So the way it works is like up to level 40 is just getting loads of experience. That's all you need to do, just experience. And they have, to their credit, opened up the way that you gain experience. My daughter, for example, I think it took her less than a month to go from level 1 to level 30. And, the fact that she was joining me on raids, despite the fact that she was only like level 15 at the time, don't get me wrong, all her Pokemon got absolutely wiped and she contributed next to nothing to that raid. It's the fact that she wasn't locked out of that raid. It wasn't a case of them going, oh, you're not level 30, you're not allowed in this raid. Sorry. She could join in. She could catch that legendary, and it meant that it didn't take her that long to reach that initial kind of buff. I think that up to level 30 is that kind of, oh, am I going to stick with this game? I don't know, but once you hit level 30 and you've got a nice group of Pokemon, it doesn't really matter if you're level 30 or level 60, unless, of course, you are going for endgame content of, I want to, try and solo this raid. I want to take part in the PvP. and therefore I want the best Pokemon teams. There's not really that much content that you get locked out of. One thing that they have done is, like you say, they almost have those barriers of, before you can get from level 40 to 41, not only do you need to earn, for example, 1 million experience, you need to do several unique challenges, which are quite quirky. So, for example, one of them was evolve every single version of Eevee. Was one of the barriers. Another one might be, you've got to beat 30 raids. I know that one of them coming up in the next level or two for me, I think level 47 or 48, is you need 3 Pokemon to hit the max level. There's another one where you have to beat, I think, Team Rocket or Giovanni, something like 3 or something times. So it's content that rewards you for continuing to play the game and play the different elements of the game. And one of the great things I like about it is, and I have to give credit to Niantic for this, is let's say that you need 1 million experience to go between 46 and 47. You hit 1 million experience, but you still haven't passed all those barriers. Your XP keeps calculating. So let's say you go up to 5 million, and then you are then able to, like, for example, evolve the Eevees. You will then roll up to the next level, and that 4 million experience surplus will just fill up your next level total. So they've not locked you out of experience gain at that point. I think for me, them increasing the levels, I'm confident in them doing that, because, like I've just said, and like Dave said in the interview, I don't think if you know about Pokemon Go, it won't put you off, because you'll know, I can still do a load of the content, despite the fact that I've just started and level 60 is a long way away. But adding those checkpoints between the levels, between level 50 and level 60, again, are unique and fun ways to reward players for playing the game in maybe ways that they haven't played or don't play much of.
And if they made it so it's a case of, and it's now just as easy to get to level 40 as it was to get to level 30. But you've now got you've now got 20 levels of very unique challenges to go through rather than just the 10. It introduces a little bit more for people who have already capped out. It introduces a little bit more for people who are already closer. And it introduces a lot for people who are picking up the game. It's very nice, as I say, reading through this, to see that new players are very much top of their list. Like, they talk about how they get millions of new players every single month. That seems like an insane number to me, and I don't know how many of those are just people restarting.
I thought about this, and I think there's definitely some of that, of new players restarting. I must admit, I have 3 Pokemon Go accounts, but that is because I was a day one player. It got to the point where I was like, I've done everything. I guess I'll start another one. And I enjoy these. Whereas now I typically only really jump into 2 accounts. One of them is my, I play 95% of the time. And then the other account is one that whenever I take over a gym, I throw in another Pokemon from my other account and just let the coins build up. And that's almost my egg hatching one. So if there is an event where it's like, hatch all the eggs, there's no way I'm spending real money on egg incubators, because it's, like we've said before, it's loot boxes basically. Whereas with this other account, it's like, well, it's free gold. I haven't paid anything for it, so I can use that. But yeah, to go back to your original point, this Pokemon Go is 8 years old. Is this? Did I read now, somewhere? Yeah. 8 years old. So there's a very real possibility that, someone's child was born at the start when Pokemon Go came out. They're now 8 years old, and, parent and child, you'd like Pokemon? Great. Here, let's get you, a cheap little starter phone, get your Pokemon Go on it, get your account set up, because Pokemon Go does have you can sign in via the Niantic.
Sorry, that's just made me feel a little bit gross. 8-year-olds with smartphones.
Yeah, I know. it's happening more than you think. I don't agree with it.
I was 13 when I got my first flip phone. How old were you?
Yeah, I was 12 and I had to share a Nokia 3310 with my brother. So I didn't even get my own phone. I had to share one.
I got a hand-me-down flip phone, like a Samsung thing from my dad, and I remember never ever taking it off charge because I was scared that it would die. So I didn't even take it with me.
Brilliant.
Back to the article. The big headline topic, the avatars. Obviously, we covered the avatar debacle. What would you say? The fan reaction, which is never going to be entirely positive whenever you change anything in Pokemon. They talk about the fact that yes, they're aware. They're aware that people didn't respond to it the way they hoped. They suggested that things have changed. I know when we first looked at this, because again, I don't play Pokemon Go anymore. It's not something I pick up, but I remember looking at those and going, the body proportions seem wrong. I don't like the body proportions. That seems very off to me. That's something they say they've worked on and have fixed. Your comments?
I will agree they have worked on them. I will not agree that they have fixed them. The closest I can remember is logging in and going, why does my character suddenly look tanned? Following it, and they've tweaked some of the skin tones. Which
yes, they do say they've added more skin tones and things like that and changed them.
That was it. It was needed. To be fair, I've not jumped in recently to the avatar creation, but that's mainly because I've got my avatar to the point where I'm like, I don't like it, but that's as close as I'm going to get to me, and I don't want to tweak it in case I can't get those proportions back.
Yeah. So the director of the company has said they are going to do continuous work. That is something they're looking into, and ongoing work is happening. His exact words were not his exact words, I'm paraphrasing. But he says that he wants every person to feel like they can be represented within Pokemon Go, which I think is realistically like what you should be aiming for. That being said, it's not going to be overnight, and it's not going to be anytime soon, and it's not going to be all at once. And we actually got an explanation, and one that I read and went, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. He points out that it's quite difficult to change the avatars because of how many outfits and how many poses already exist. And these were designed for 2 different figures. And now they've already introduced a bunch of different body proportions, a bunch of different sizes, and all of the stuff you had before, it's all backwards compatible. And I think as people who aren't game designers, we overlooked that aspect. And fair play. Fair play. Thank you very much for putting that effort in and making it so that people's hard work didn't go to waste and those items and things are still available.
Yeah. I think my frustration with it is the fact that why did you not come out with this reasoning? Like, when everyone was complaining, I think it would have gone some way to getting people off your back, including me. They release it on day one, and then, along with that comes out a press release and news stories and articles going, we're aware that there will be teething problems. Just so you know, these are the reasons why, like Connor's just said about, there are so many body proportions, height, your body type and just everything else. Of course, it's going to be not next to impossible, very time consuming and very difficult to make all those clothes suddenly fit these wide variety of body types. And if they'd have just come out and gone, yeah, we're aware of it. Like, we had to at some point implement this change, and the longer we left it, the more work we would have to put into it, because if they're still rolling out clothing, like, and poses, it's only going to accumulate and build and get worse. So it's better to just go, roll it out and go, yeah, we're aware of it. Bear with us. We'll continue to work on this. Not so much fix it. Now reading this, I don't want to use the word fix it because I realize just how much effort will have got into it. It does, for me, open up that one criticism of you should have done this much earlier on.
Much earlier.
Like it's a problem of your own making. It's something that you should have done very early on. You should have done one of two things. Either you should have kept it as it was and just added hair functions, which, the majority of comments I saw online was that. I'm not saying that was everyone, and I'm not saying the 2 avatar system with hairs did represent everyone, because it doesn't. But they should have done this a lot earlier on in the day. But I think, let's be honest with you, earlier on in the article, they talk about bringing blockbuster features. They want reasons for people to continue coming back to the game, especially if, eventually, the number of new Pokemon will run out.
Mm.
And let's be honest with you, an avatar system, is that going to take priority over changes to raids, changes to adding routes, adding party play, adding all these new features that they've implemented to increase collaboration and people playing together? It's not. So I can understand why the avatar was probably bottom of the list or close to it.
So counterpoint as to why they maybe didn't come out with this initially. I think it's difficult to come at the backlash of the Pokemon fan base with anything that doesn't sound like an excuse. And I think we got burned really, really hard with Dexit.
Yeah.
I think they came out very quickly and went, no, it's really difficult to do because modeling, and then got proved over and over and over again that just wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that they would have been proved that actually it's really easy to implement this and you're all just crap. But I think a lot of people would have just heard it as an excuse, whereas they went, okay, people are annoyed. Let them be the loud majority. The loud minority. That's fine. Let them kick off on Reddit. Don't feed the trolls. Just start work.
Yep.
And then once we've got something to show, once we show that progress is underway, then we can explain the situation. So although yes, I would have liked this response a lot earlier, I can maybe see why it was a smart idea not to come out with it.
Agreed. I think it was one of them that this avatar rollout, I don't think it was ever going to get them, that praise straight out of the gate, because it was almost either you roll it out now, realizing there are issues and take the hit from it, or you leave it even longer to try and, try to update it while you are still updating the game. And again, that feels like it's one of those things where you'll then never roll it out. They're in a bad position, but it is nice to hear a bit more of reasoning as to why we got that.
Yeah, and work is ongoing. That's the other thing, which is nice to hear. It does sound like they care. They haven't just gone, it's people kicking off over nothing. We're happy with it. We're leaving it as is. They heard the feedback. They're taking it on board. They're moving forward.
And you do have to give Niantic credit, because I look back to as a day one player and the difference it is now. Like, you look at screenshots of back when what it was like in back in the day, you go, oh wow, there are so many new quality of life features and reasons to keep playing this game, new additions to this game. Whereas, other companies, I think, would have just gone, okay, this month, Gen 1, this month, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, look at all these ways you can spend money. Oh, by the way, bye-bye. Like, no new content. See you later. We've made our book. We're off. Niantic, it is a business. Of course, it wants to make money, okay. But it does seem like the kind of organization that is at least going, no, we want to make sure that there are new ways for players to play, rather than just, milking the game until it just falls off a cliff. They've constantly added to the content, to the ways you can play, and they're going to keep doing that, it sounds like.
Yeah. A couple of last little points that were in this. They seemed very much like the bugbears of the interviewer more than anything. Extra small Pokemon could maybe gain some specific relevance in the future. No comment as to what that could be, but I believe
think that. So,
sorry, I'll just read the exact quote. we want players to find value in all different types of Pokemon. Cool.
Yeah. So at the moment, what you can do with extra large Pokemon is what's called showcases. Again, another new way to, show off your Pokemon. Of all it is some Pokestops. You can submit your Pokemon, and then it has a ranking system based on 1 to, I don't know how many you can submit. I've seen like mid-20s. Typically, Pokemon that are, the bigger the Pokemon, the more points it gets, and the more points it has, the higher up you are comparing to other players. And then they typically last anywhere from 1 day to several days. And then when that showcase ends, you get rewards based on your ranking. So you can get things like, I've had remote raid passes, I've had egg incubators. Must admit they're quite rare. Most of the time you get Pokeballs, Stardust, and lore modules. But again, it's another way to go. Oh, all those Pokemon that you're catching, there is some value in having them. As of yet, there's nothing you can do with extra small Pokemon. However, players like myself are keeping them, knowing that at some point they will have some kind of value.
So there you go. There is talks of, yes, we do want you to have a reason to keep them. No, we can't say what that is yet. And the other comment was about badges. So at the moment, you can only hold 1,000 badges, and then it just starts deleting your oldest one, which is not great, really. That's not really
great,
the way to do it. And, the director does say straight up, like, yeah, that's not the player experience we want. That's not how we want people to feel, that these things are worthless after you collect so much, or your oldest achievements are just being wiped out. Does bring up the point that at a certain level, you need to start getting rid of assets that are sort of held within the player account to stop the game being bogged down.
Yeah.
Which, again, a valid response. Thank you very much for being open with us and explaining, like, oh, no, this is just how the game works, and this is why it is the way it is. But again, very much something they've gone, yeah, we realize that's not what we want it to be. And I think he says, yeah, you've said this to me before. I'll talk to people about it.
And it's one of those things where I didn't know this was a thing. I think the majority of players don't know it's a thing. And this is the first time that I've ever heard of it. As a player, it doesn't bother me, but it's the fact that it sounds like because it's bothering someone, he will at least have conversations about it rather than just getting, okay, whatever. Which is, different from Game Freak, which seems to be a case of, we don't really want to listen to the players, or at least seem to be listening to the players, and we'll just do our own thing. Whereas Niantic does feel like, while I might not always agree with Niantic's reasons behind things, at least Niantic comes out with reasons why.
Yeah. I just want to read like verbatim from this article, this sort of closing statement. A lot of players who've been playing for a long time are looking for something new all the time. But the more we add without thinking about ways to improve the onboarding experience for newer players, the more daunting the game can become, and then you see the worst possible situation where the game stops growing. But you might be surprised to hear that millions of new players are coming into Pokemon Go every month, and with that amount of new people coming in and experiencing in the game, we want to make sure the experience is just as good for them as it is for the players that have been playing for many, many years at this point. We still have an exciting set of features on our roadmap, not just for the remainder of this year, but we're already talking about 2025, and we're also talking about 2026. There's some really ambitious stuff that we have in mind, and you can always expect Pokemon Go to evolve over time. It's just nice. It's actually, we have a go at Pokemon Go quite a lot on this podcast, and that's because, unfortunately, a lot of the news that we get from it comes from people's reactions on Reddit. We don't talk about a lot of the new releases, a lot of the new Pokemon that are coming in, because it's not really give us it. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. It doesn't give us a lot to talk about. It's not a conversation topic. How excited are you that Mega Heracross is coming? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Whereas the controversy and things like that, at least we got something to go back and forth on. It's felt really nice today doing it for the other side, doing it for the director of the company who clearly cares, at least comes across in this article that they really care. You know, I understand that there's PR and they're putting on a good face and things like that. But this doesn't sound like somebody who just goes, yeah, we only care about turnover. We only care about getting new people in. These are people who build their game. And I've always kind of said that behind every company are people. And behind every game development company, there are people who make this game and they want it to be the best game it can be. Maybe we need to give them a little bit of slack in future and expect them to have the best intentions if they don't always land perfectly.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what I would like to see from this isn't even anything to do with Pokemon Go. It's more from the Pokemon Company and Game Freak going, oh, there is some benefit to actually having open, honest conversations. Again, of course, it'll be in a controlled way. Let's be honest with you, this article that's come out, there will be a back and forth between the companies to go, okay, what can you publish? What can't you publish? Strip that out, change the wording of that. Game Freak, we would like to hear more from the organization, just to know more about, why they make the decisions they do. And again, other than Dexy back in the day, which feels like a lifetime ago, feels like we haven't really had those opportunities for them to just tell us the reason why they do things. And I would like to see more of that.
I will say the big difference you've got is obviously Michael Steranka and the Niantic team are US based rather than the Japan based Game Freak. So there's always going to be a difference there because at least early on, a lot of the Pokemon interviews were badly translated and people got a lot of really bad misquotes from the Pokemon team. So I'm not saying that they essentially go, oh, don't speak to the Western audiences because they'll get the wrong idea. But I think they are definitely more tight-lipped over things because of that reason.
All right. That's a shame, really. It really is. Makes you wonder if we could get whether or not there are Japanese interviews that take place. Between,
there are.
Game Freak.
There are. The guys over at Did You Know Gaming are very, very good at translating those. A lot of their videos on Pokemon come from old articles in Japanese magazines that they've paid to get translated professionally.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there. Dr. Lava is another person I've referenced as somebody who does a lot of Pokemon. What's the word where you keep things for a long time?
Archiving?
Archiving, thank you. He does a lot of archiving for Pokemon resources and things like that. Does a lot of translations as well, gets them done professionally. So my hats off to those kind of people. Thank you very much for your service. Please keep doing it.
Definitely.
Finding these old articles and getting them translated correctly is a lot better than finding a lot of the old English articles where they've kind of gone in, like I've read some of the old English articles and they've gone in not necessarily with the best intentions and not the best questions.
Right.
And then it feels like the translation hasn't been, if not accurate, not like the words aren't as they were intended kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
So there's a lot of misinformation that comes out of Pokemon because of that.
It's a shame. Well, fingers crossed then that we do get more moving forward, but Connor's just said maybe that's not something that will happen for Game Freak, but we'll wait and see. You got anything else before we wrap up the show for this week?
No, I think that's it.
That's the show for this week. If you've gone this far, you're just a top dollar, aren't you? Before we go, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave a review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you're watching on YouTube, then please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps out our podcast. Of course, if you've got a comment or question or a topic, you can reach us by leaving a comment on our podcast on YouTube, by emailing goldenrodpod@gmail.com, by leaving it on our Discord channel, or by using the hashtag goldenrodpod on Twitter. Conor, where can we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel at Captain Fidget or on Twitter at CapFidget. Except for I'm not on Twitter anymore. It's gone. I got rid of it. I'm sorry.
Did you? Oh, yeah. Fair enough. I can understand that. I'm this close to doing it. I'm Ben. You can find me as Professor Hoenn Gaming on YouTube and Professor Hoenn on Twitter. We'll be back next Friday for another week of Pokemon podcast content.
See ya!